Something shifted in the air the instant the first summer swallows dipped over Windsor Great Park this year. It was as though the royal landscape inhaled, waiting for a familiar soprano note in the Great Windsor Choir to re-emerge. Since trooping the colour in mid-June, when Catherine, Princess of Wales, stunned the watching world by appearing on the Buckingham Palace balcony in spite of her invisible, ongoing fight with cancer, every subsequent diary entry attached to her name has pulsed like a live electrical wire. Would she come? Could she come? Dare we ask? In the same breathless fortnight, two royal spectacles rose like twin peaks on the social calendar. First came Royal Ascot, that 5-day collision of bloodstock pedigree and couture millinery that turns Berkshire turf into a fashion magazine come alive. Then came the soft, strawberries and lawn tennis hum of Wimbledon, a fortnight Catherine normally treats like a sacred pilgrimage. In years past her silhouette in the royal box has become almost as iconic as the green centre court boards, an ice cream pastel dress, a neat clutch, a ribbon of glossy hair lifting in the breeze as she applauds a perfectly struck backhand. But this summer everything felt precarious, balanced on test results and white cell counts no one outside a privileged medical circle could see. So when Royal Ascot's opening carriage procession clattered through the gates on that crystalline Tuesday morning, cameras were primed like hunting dogs. Here came the first landau, King Charles, hawk-eyed beneath the brim of a top hat, and Queen Camilla under a billow of pale feathers. The second carriage carried the Princess Royal and the Duke of Gloucester. The third should, by Ascot tradition and by the public's fervent hope, have revealed Catherine beside Prince William, ready to trade knowing smiles with the Queen over the year's most audacious fascinators. Instead, William sat with impeccable composure beside the Duke of Kent, his wife's habitual seat left to gather sun and speculation. A collective exhale, half disappointment, half instinctive concern, rippled across the enclosures. Social media ignited in seconds. Where is she? Is the treatment faltering? Was trooping only a brave cameo before another long retreat behind Kensington Palace's walls? Within hours a wave of whispered explanations sloshed through royal watching circles. She is resting on doctor's orders. The heat is brutal this week. Chemotherapy fatigue is unpredictable. All true, all rational. Yet none could extinguish the deeper unease kindled by a single absent silhouette. Because Catherine has become far more than a senior working royal, she is, for many Britons, the emotional metronome of the modern monarchy. Her presence sets the tempo, her smile signals that the engine still purrs, her sartorial wit sprinkles fairy dust over duty's heavy cloak. Remove her, even for compassionate medical reasons, and the Windsor machine sounds suddenly hollow, its pistons clanking out of time. Then, just as anxiety threatened to curdle into gloom, another sliver of news leapt from the court circular. On the very day Ascot opened, without its reigning style queen, Catherine had in fact travelled discreetly to a high-level strategy meeting of the Royal Foundation alongside her husband. No cameras, no public fanfare, merely a quiet slot in the royal diary recorded with the usual archival brevity. But that one dry line carried a vault of reassurance. The princess is not retreating from duty, she is rationing it, channeling what energy the chemo leaves her into the projects closest to her heart. And here the plot thickens. Palace insiders have begun to murmur that the couple's joint appearance at that closed-door session marks the opening move in a new recovery rhythm Catherine herself is setting. Call it the soft launch strategy. Instead of the traditional royal rebound, grand engagement, smiling walkabout, hands full of flowers, she intends to stitch together a series of impact meetings behind the scenes. Gather the early years advisors. Brief the mental health task force. Zoom in quietly with the Earthshot innovation teams. It is, according to one aide, work without the lace ruffles, a way to keep her fingerprints on the monarchy's progressive agenda, while sparing her body the flashbulb gauntlet. Yet away from boardrooms and briefing papers, the medical reality remains stark. New information has emerged, sourced from hospital staff who admired her stoicism, that during those trooping the color photographs Catherine was concealing a chemo port, a small titanium disc surgically nested beneath the skin near her collarbone with a catheter snaking into a central vein. Ports spare veins the repeated assault of cannulas, but they are a tacit badge of the battlefield. That she rallied onto a parade ground in front of 500,000 spectators, torso cinched by a Jenny Packham coat dress, while medicine pulsed through that hidden line, now feels close to superhuman. One oncology nurse, granted anonymity, offered a simple verdict: for any patient to endure immunosuppressing chemotherapy and still stand for an hour on a balcony in summer heat, waving, smiling, absorbing noise, well, that takes reserves most of us never have to summon. She's fortunate, yes, but she's also ferociously determined. Ferocious determination has always colored the princess's public persona, but never more so than in her calculated silences. There was the haunting video last March, when she sat on a bench beneath springtime daffodils and used that calm, measured voice to admit the C-word had gate-crashed her life. She asked only for time, space and understanding. Britain granted it, just, and now waits, half holding its breath, for the next chapter. Meanwhile the summer calendar keeps turning. Wimbledon's centre court grass is trimmed to velvet, strawberries are piled on silver trays, and the broadcasters have already rehearsed their cutaway shots to the royal box. If Catherine does appear, even for a single match, the roar will likely drown the thwack of rackets. If she does not, the nation will nod, chastened, and remind itself that healing out muscles ceremony. Behind closed doors at Adelaide Cottage, aides say Prince William has installed a war room of post-it notes and color-coded charts to ensure his wife's re-entry is patient-led, not PR-driven. One family friend describes evenings where the heir to the throne chops onions for chicken soup while Catherine reads bedtime stories through the open kitchen door. Her voice a little rough, the chemo fog sometimes stealing whole paragraphs. The children have turned guessing mum's hat color at future events into a game that ends, more often than not, with group giggles on the rug. And across that careful domestic tableau lies the echoing question: what becomes of a monarchy when one of its brightest constellations flickers? Perhaps it learns humility. Perhaps it discovers that duty can look like an empty carriage seat, disappointing in the moment, profound in the message it carries. We take health seriously. We choose humanity over optics. We are, behind the guilt and protocol, as breakable as bone china. So watch the emerald hills of Berkshire, the manicured lawns of Wimbledon, the solemn vestibules of future state occasions. Some days Catherine will glide into view, diamond brooch catching the sun, and hearts will lift. Other days a seat will remain unoccupied, and the public will practice patience, learning that absence itself can be an act of courage. If you find solace or inspiration in this quieter, fiercer chapter of the princess's story, share your thoughts below. And if you wish to follow every subtle beat of her measured return, remember to like, subscribe and ring that bell. We will be here, charting the pauses as faithfully as the appearances, because in this royal season, pauses may prove the most eloquent moments of all. ChatGPT